Barry said, my name is Jerry Brown. I've spoken to this group before. I helped with the Kotzky grocery presentation. I did the Kotzky basketball team part. I was born and raised in Winchester, Indiana, so I'm not a native South Sider like a lot of you. I graduated from high school there in 1970, and then I went to Indiana State, where I graduated in 1974, and then I started teaching at Meridian that fall, and as Barry said, I taught social studies, and I taught there from 1974 to 2010. History has always been a love and a hobby for me. A lot of people they have a certain time period or a certain thing about U.S. history they really love. I'm more, I'd say, a generalist. If anything, I really love sports history and local history. And so this was a natural to do the history of Meridian High School. Enough about me. You came here to hear about Meridian. There were two events that happened across America, I think, that really influenced the building of Meridian High School, and they certainly happened here in Perry Township. One was the post-World War II baby boom, of which a lot of people in here are members of that generation. Well, inevitably, as those millions of babies were born in those post-war years, they were going to have to go to school somewhere. So that led to building projects all over the country. At the same time that happened, you had the rapid suburbanization of America too. And Perry Township's a great example of that. These guys from the war came back with incomes and jobs and families, and they wanted to move to the suburbs where they could have a house and some lawn. And so you put those two things together, and that created the need for Meridian High School. When I put this together, I thought of some other high schools around Indiana just like it. Besides PMHS, Columbus East, Lawrence North, Kokomo Hayworth, Bloomington North, Muncie North, Fort Wayne Northrop, they were all built about the same time that Meridian was built. So what happened here wasn't unique, it happened across the state. The first mention of Meridian High School that I could find was in the August 19th, 1969 board minutes, and they're up here. And at the very top, you'll see there was a motion made by Chick Orme to build a second high school. Okay? I've always thought that was rather interesting, because when I started as a new teacher in 1974, if there was somebody that was Mr. Southport, it was Chick Orme. And to think that he introduced the motion to build a second high school that would rival Meridian, I would not have believed it until I saw it in print. Here's another interesting thing that I found out when I was looking over the documents. If you look at the very bottom, you'll see they were looking at having all year round school. This was clear back in 1969. So this isn't a new idea. The township was considering it clear back in those days. Interesting too that they called it Perry Township High School number 2 when they made the motion. So we didn't even have a name yet, okay? And just last week I was going through some notes from some old board minutes, and I found that as late as April of 1971, they still didn't have a name for it. It was referred to in the board minutes as the unnamed high school. Okay? No respect at all. The first time that I saw any official documents for reference to the name Meridian High School was in a December 1971 board meeting, and where I finally saw Meridian High School in print. So sometime between April of 1971 and December of 1971, they officially named it Meridian High School. Here's a picture of Meridian High School under construction. Those of you that are lifelong Southsiders probably remember when that was still a field. I have been told, but I have not been able to get confirmation on it, that the township bought the property from the Elkins family. And I have a teacher friend at MacArthur where I volunteer whose last name is Elkins, but she doesn't think it's any relation to them. If any of you know anything about that family and maybe their connection to the land that Perry Meridian sits on, I would really appreciate it. Dick Chu helped me find the document for the sale of the lands. Where's Dick? Stand up, Dick. All right. Well, you don't need to stand up. I want to recognize some people tonight. He helped me find some documents in it. The township bought the property in 1960 for $80,000. So I'm thinking as early as 1960 that the board had the foresight to know that they were going to have some more land for more schools. And it was probably going to have to be on the west side. So once again, if any of you have got a connection to the Elkins family, I would like to get more information about that. There's another picture of the construction. I got these pictures, fortunately enough, from a scrapbook that was put together for the decades of Perry Meridian High School back in 2007. Ron Cunningham, right here, his class, along with Nancy Johnson, made these decade by decade scrapbooks. They're beautiful. I think they're maybe the most beautiful thing in the rooms. And I brought the 1970s one. I didn't want to try to transport all of them. So I got these construction pictures from that scrapbook. This is one of my favorite ones, although I've got a lot of favorite stuff. This is an article by Tom Keating. If you're longtime Southsiders, you probably remember when Tom Keating wrote for the Indianapolis Star. I want to direct you to what's in the red, okay? And you will see that it talks about Perry Township seniors or citizens being concerned about Perry Meridian getting a gym. Hard to believe that they didn't think they needed a gym. And an ice skating rink. The original plans for Perry Meridian called for having an ice skating rink that they would co-manage with the Indianapolis Parks system. Well, that fell through, but as we know, where did it go? Over in Perry Park, and it's still there, and they currently manage it. So I thought that was interesting. The original plans also call for there to be a greenhouse, but it was dropped to save money. There was a planetarium, which was included in the plans, and that did get built. PMHS was built in what was called the open concept at the time. That was a very trendy thing to do in the early 70s for schools. But it also meant few walls and few windows. Okay? There were portable dividers separating the interior classrooms. Now, that made it nice if you wanted to combine classes for larger group instruction, guest speakers, that kind of thing. But if you were teaching in those rooms, you can imagine what the noise was, because one teacher's voice would drift over to the other classroom. And sometimes there were 4 classrooms in a quad room with nothing but dividers. Those stayed there until Perry Meridian was remodeled, renovated in 1999. Keep in mind, though, the school district was also building Meridian Middle School at the same time and Winchester Village. So they had a lot of costs on their plate. And so I'm sure those things were done as much to save money as it was for what was fashionable in education. Perry Meridian cost about $5 million to build. I got this next number from Dave Schaefer. A lot of you know him. He works with the company that consults school boards on schools construction. And he talked to one of the people he works with. He said it would probably cost between $200 and $250 million to build Perry Meridian today. But you think, there'll probably be more walls, more windows, all the technology would go into it. So it would be a lot of money to replace Perry Meridian High School. Parts of PMHS weren't ready. The gym wasn't ready. The basketball tryouts and the practices were held over at the P-Tech building in the gym. The gym was ready for the beginning of the regular season. Jim Holt told me that he drove a bus from Perry Meridian High School over to the P-Tech gym for the boys to practice and then drove them back to the school. Now the girls We did have a girls team that first year. They practiced at Meridian Middle School, so all they had to do was walk across the street for their practicing. The pool wasn't finished when the school opened, but it was ready for the beginning of the swim season. Since both the gym and the pool were not ready, lots of phys ed classes were held outside in the parking lot until both of those were ready. Chuck Earl, who was on the original staff and was a PE teacher, told me they played a lot of softball in the parking lot that first year. I would not have wanted to be sliding into a base in that parking lot. The auditorium was not ready, but it was finished in time for a building dedication ceremony in January 1974, and I'll speak a little more about that later. How did the students feel about leaving Southport High School going to Perry Meridian? Well, I interviewed a lot of students over the years to ask their opinions for those that were in those first classes. I'd say about 75% of them were very happy to be at Perry Meridian High School. Here were three things they mentioned. Southport had gotten so crowded to try to get around in the hallways. I believe it was 4,500 before the split, something like that. PMHS had air conditioning. Now, we take that for granted, but 50 years ago, lots of people didn't have it, and they really appreciated having air conditioning. So it wasn't something to take lightly. Everything was new. The science labs, the gym, the carpeting they even mentioned, the pool, just everything was brand new and had a freshness about it. I'd say 25% or so were not happy. I was not there that first year, so I'm just going on what people have told me. And those 25%, as I understand it, were quite vocal and kind of rowdy that first year because they didn't want to be there. Now, the ones that told me they didn't want to be there, the most common reason was they still had friends at Southport, especially boyfriends and girlfriends. Well, you know what that means when you're a teenager, so they wanted to be near them. The other thing the more I've thought about it, the more I actually might have been like them, being a history guy. They wanted to go to Southport because that's where their parents graduated from. That's where their grandparents may have graduated. Their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, their aunts, their uncles, in-laws, outlaws, whatever. They had gone to Southport, and they wanted to be a part of that historical legacy. And as I said, I might have identified with that at the time. That air conditioning would have made a difference for me. One of the things that I did not hear that surprised me, I expected to hear some people say it would be a lot easier to be a starter on a sports team or get the leads in the musical or in the plays. I didn't hear one person tell me that. And I don't know whether it was they just forgotten that or really it wasn't that important to them, but I kind of expected to hear. Because, when Southport was as big as they were, to be a starter, that was elite. And so, now you've increased your chance dramatically by having a second school. School colors. Southport students voted on what the colors and mascot would be. And I have tried to find some documentation on this. I'm only going what people told me. Dave Ladd, who takes care of the Southport history rooms, he let me in one day and I poured over newspapers from that era, yearbooks, found nothing. Barry let me into the archives room for the Perry Township Weekly and the Southsider Voice, and I went back in those early 70s, nothing. So I'm just going on what I've been told. I do know that the Southport student body voted on the colors. I've heard various colors mentioned. The most popular ones that I've heard mentioned were green and gold. Think Baylor, College Baylor. Think orange and blue. New York Knicks, Illinois, blue and orange. And then Columbia blue and silver, which was the winning selection. Now, several years ago, they changed the color of blue, and the official one now is the color of this shirt I'm wearing. But it's still a form of blue. The mascot choices, once again, I'm just going on what people told me. Dragons, pirates, cobras, and then, of course, the winner was the Falcons. Our first principal was James Head. There he is. I know, 50 years ago. He had been an assistant principal at Southport before coming to principal at Perry Meridian. And I think he was only 33 years old when the building opened. I want you to think about that. At 33 years old and be the principal of a big metropolitan high school. You know, I don't think I would have been up for that. He stayed at Perry Meridian as the principal until 1995 when he went to central office. He stayed there until he retired in 2001. Jim Head is still living and lives in Florida. We had 3 assistant principals that first year: Hal Cole, Bob Dunn, Paul Franklin. Okay? The Hal Cole story is a little sad. But he was our first assistant principal. During the summer of 1974, after the first school year, Ted Guzik was killed in an automobile crash. Okay? He was scheduled to be the principal at the Southport Middle School. With his death, then Hal Cole was transferred over there, and he became the first principal of that school. He was replaced by Dave Shaw. The other one was Bob Dunn. Bob Dunn had come from Manual, and where he had been a business teacher. Bob stayed as an assistant principal until 1989 when he retired. And Bob is one of what I believe are the 3 oldest Perry Meridian retirees: Bob Dunn, Dave Bertram, and Jim Smith. And I think they're all right there at 92 years old. Not sure on that, but it's pretty close to that. Paul Franklin stayed till 1979, and then he transferred to an elementary school. Over the years, the following people have served as Perry Meridian principals: Ed Henry, 1995 to 2006, Anita Silverman, 2006 to 7, Joan Ellis, 2007 to 2012, Rawlin Abraham, 2012 to 2017, and Kurt Bodiger is the current principal at Perry Meridian High School. The 2 deans the first year: Paul Antropus for the boys. Paul had come from Southport, and Betty Toombs for the girls. Betty had also come from Southport. Paul left Perry Meridian after that first year and went back to Southport. I'm guessing being the dean wasn't too happy an experience for him, but he'd have to answer for that himself. Vale Randolph replaced Paul after that first year. Our first athletic director was Noah Ellis. Noah had come from Manual High School, where he had been a longtime teacher and football coach. Some of our first head coaches: football, Kelly Clore; boys cross country, Jay Campbell; girls we didn't have one yet; boys swimming, Dick Brunaler; boys basketball, Dave Bertram; girls basketball, Roz Murphy; boys track, Tom Bolson; girls golf, Linus Powers; girls tennis, Judy Floyd; boys tennis, Dave Schaefer; boys baseball, Jim Roach; and boys gymnastics, Chuck Earl. Now, you notice I didn't mention too many girls' sports. They were just getting started. And over the next few years, they were all phased in. But at the beginning, we didn't have girls' teams for all the sports. Our first football game was played against Brebeuf at the stadium, September 1st, 1973. It was a significant game for Perry Meridian for these 3 reasons. One, it was the first football game for Perry Meridian High School, and it was a home game. Mike Tomey played in that first game. Mike's sitting right over here. Anybody else here, Mike, from that? I don't see anybody. Okay. It was a victory for us. As I said, we defeated Brebeuf 13-10, and it was the first football game played under the new overtime rules adopted by the IHSAA. Prior to 1973, if a game ended in a tie, it just ended in a tie. But the IHSAA decided to have a tiebreaker, and since that was our first game, we had the first overtime game in high school history. There's kind of a story behind that, how I found out. I was at a workshop for the Indiana Retired Teachers Association, And a guy sat down next to me, and we started talking. He told me he had retired from Buff, and I asked if he coached, and he said football. And so I said, well, you know, we played you our first game. And he says, did you know about the overtime? I said, no. And he says, that was the first overtime game played under the new rules. So, I mean, I love trivia stuff like that. It drives my wife crazy, but that's okay. Another interesting thing about that game was that the pep station for the game was held in the parking lot. The gym wasn't ready. And they put up some kind of a stand, and the cheerleaders did their thing. From that, I also found out when they had cheerleader tryouts, they had to have them out there on that stand in the parking lot because the gym wasn't ready. What about homecoming? We don't have any graduates come back yet, right? Well, they decided to have something, and they called it forthcoming. Okay? So instead of a homecoming, Perry Meridian had a forthcoming. There was a king and queen and a dance, just like a regular homecoming. The homecoming theme, appropriately enough, was "We've Only Just Begun" by the Carpenters. We defeated Ben Davis in that forthcoming game. There was also a forthcoming that second year because we still didn't have any graduates yet. So the first real homecoming game, that didn't come until the fall of 1975. Some more information on that first football team that I find interesting. They only had a 5-5 record. That doesn't sound too impressive. Yeah. But I want you to consider this. No seniors. Okay. So they had to play teams that had full 4 grades. And they actually won the Marion County Championship that year with a 5-5 record because all their 5 victories were against Marion County teams. Yeah. 5 losses were against teams outside of Marion County. Mike tells me that they changed the rules for the championship after that season. Perry Meridian had a building dedication ceremony that first year. Got a picture on that? Yeah. That's one of the pictures from it. There are a lot more pictures from it in a scrapbook back there. In the very back, on the far right, you'll see a young-looking Keith Brown. Okay? And Keith Brown's here tonight. Okay? He's probably taking notes and is going to correct half of what I say at the end of it, but I hope he trusts me. He's very knowledgeable on Perry Township School's history. So. Our first musical was Oliver, and Guy Rumsey was the director. Guy had transferred from Southport High School to Perry. We had a prom that first year, despite not having a senior class, and the theme was Summer Breeze, okay, Seals and Crofton. A few other things before I leave the first year. As I understand it, the teachers at Southport were asked their opinions about being transferred to Perry Meridian High School. But I also found out that they didn't think their opinions mattered much. It pretty much came down to what Albert Tile and Jim Head decided was going to be. Who was going to get to go to Southport and go to Perry, and who was going to get to stay at Southport. Most, but not all, of the transferred teachers were relatively young. Okay? Also, many of the teachers that were hired for that second year, which included me, were really young too. Because of this, I think Perry having a really young staff, it paid benefits for those early years and beyond. I've talked to a lot of former students who said those newer, younger teachers were really good on relating to us. You know, because we weren't, you know, I started at 22 and I had students that were 17 and 18. So they felt like that all those new young teachers related very well to them. I want to give you an example of one that I can remember from my department, social studies. Those first few years, I figured up nobody was older than 38 years old. To me, that's incredible for just one department. I don't know if that was across the board, but for our department, I'm pretty sure there was no one older than 38. As I said, the first year brought us 4 full grades. Our enrollment was about 2,550 for 1974 and 1975. A few members of the senior class established some rules and events for what was called the mini Olympics. Okay. I think they wanted to do something as a takeoff on Southport. I think Randy, you told me, or Dick, a tricycle race they have at the end of they used to have that in the, okay. So we had mini Olympics, and a group of 3 seniors got together, wrote up the rules, the regulations, and the events for those mini Olympics, and went ahead with them. One of the girls was Sherry Bilbrey. She didn't think they'd really get approved. They just didn't think Mr. Head would approve of that kind of thing. But he did. And so they got to hold them at the end of May. Some of the events were inner tube squeezing race. 2 people would be in an inner tube, and then you had to try to race. Wagon train race, a balloon toss, wheelbarrow race, a jump rope race. I mentioned Sherry Bilbrey, but I do want to mention 2 other names because they helped start a tradition that still exists at Perry Meridian. Bob Wilsey and Tammy Smith. And now the events are different than what they had back then, but the mini Olympics still holds. One other big thing that year was that Perry Meridian had their first graduation. This is another one of my favorite pieces of memorabilia. This is a picture from the very first graduation. Not many high schools can claim to have pictures from their very first graduation. And there's a whole scrapbook back there, pictures from that graduation. When I first started working on the Perry Meridian history rooms, it was filled with junk computers and just boxes of stuff. Well, one of the things that I found in there was some old negatives from that graduation. Well, I'm not a big photography guy, but I asked my son-in-law, Joe, who's recording it here tonight. He said, take it to Roberts, and they were able to develop pictures for me. Now, some of them aren't in the best shape. I mean, it was almost 40-some years, before I found them. So some of them aren't in the best shape, but just to have something from that first year, I think was great. There's actually one student at Perry Meridian High School from Perry Meridian in the second year that is still teaching at Perry Meridian High School, Mike Armstrong. He was a freshman during the 1974-5 school year. And Mike is teaching health and phys ed now. He is a cross-country coach, and he was a longtime girls basketball coach, and now he's coaching at Franklin Community. The next year, 1976, 5-6, I think was very pivotal for Perry Meridian. In fact, I would say it's the most pivotal year in the history of Perry Meridian High School, and I'll tell you why I think that way. First of all, our football team went 9-1. The only loss was to Ben Davis. The winning percentage of 90% is still the best winning percentage for a regular season in school history. Their only loss was to Ben Davis. Ben Davis also went 9-1. Back then, there were only 4 teams that qualified for the playoffs. The state was divided into 4 districts, and it's either the coaches, the sports writers, or both, decided on 1 team per district. Well, our loss was to Ben Davis. We both had a 9-1 record, so the first tiebreaker was head-to-head competition. And so Ben Davis got the playoff spot. I've often thought over the years, if the playoffs back then were like they are now, how far Perry Meridian might have been able to go. But when you only had 1 team qualify for a district, now, keep in mind, that's the Indianapolis Metro District. There are a lot of good teams. It'd been nice to see how far we could go. The quarterback was Dave Tile, who a lot of you will recognize that name. His dad is Richie Tile, longtime teacher and basketball coach at Southport. Dave was quite the person, and I'll tell you why. His starting quarterback record was 17-3. That's the 2 best years for a starting quarterback in Perry Meridian history. He received all county and all state honors, and if Perry Meridian had been in a conference back then, we weren't, I'm pretty sure he would have gotten some all-conference honors as well. Dave turned down a few college football offers because he wanted to concentrate on pre-med studies at IU. He became a doctor and married 1977 PMH graduate Patty Johnson. They moved to Colorado where he practiced medicine. He was an active athlete all his life. I mean, you know, he did it all from what I've been told. Skiing, snowboarding, cross-country skiing, mountain biking, you name it, he was doing it, okay? But here's the part that I think's the best about Dave Tile. Starting in 2008, Dave and a team went to Tanzania and did medical missionary work. And they mostly did cleft palate surgeries and helped to burn victims. And I found out from his wife, Patty, that they would do 60 to 80 cases in about 4.5 days. I mean, it was nonstop. Okay? Sadly, Dave's health took a turn for the worse, and he was unable to keep doing it. So I think his last year was 2018, Patty told me. Sadly, Dave passed away from cancer on May 16th, 2022. He was only 64 years old. The family live streamed the service via Zoom. I was with a group of his hometown friends and some of my former students as we watched the service. It was very different to watch a funeral service via Zoom. Okay? But it was very moving to hear the people in his life give the testimonials about how Dave had affected their lives. During that same school year, I think the most important event in Perry Meridian history happened. Once again, this is just my subjective view on it. Our basketball team, boys basketball team, went to the finals of the semi-state, and that's a team picture. Okay? Keep in mind back then, high school boys basketball was king. Okay? No Colts, no ESPN, no cable sports, okay? No girls sports. So high school basketball was really the thing. I mean, it was front page news for both Indianapolis newspapers. I've tried to convey to young people, I've spoken at Perry Meridian to a couple of classes about Perry Meridian history. I just find it almost impossible to convey to them the kind of passion and spirit for high school basketball that existed back in those days. They just can't relate to it. But I try to impress upon them what that meant to the school. They put Perry Meridian on the map as a school and as a team. Before this, we were a little-known school outside of southern Marion County. I want to show you something. I didn't have Joe make a picture, but I'll put it on the memorabilia table. This, to me, sums it up. This was a newspaper article. What is a Perry Meridian? I suppose back in 1976, that was a very good question. And so the article goes on to talk about the school history and how it got started in the team. But I thought, that just symbolizes what it was like back then for Perry Meridian. We just did not have much of an identity. It was a magical time for school spirit. Even Mayor Hudnut came to one of our PEP stations, which was pretty neat, and he got some TV coverage and some press coverage. The two stars on the team were Kenny Montgomery and Kevin Rostenkowski. Kevin was a senior that year. He became an Indiana All-Star. Kenny graduated in 1977, and he also became an Indiana All-Star. Kenny played collegiately at North Carolina State for 1 year, and then he transferred to Texas. Story I heard was that Jim Kreebacks helped lead the way to get him to Texas, but I've never talked to him about that. Kevin was also an outstanding baseball player, a pitcher, and he pursued the pro baseball route after graduation, but had injury problems, and so that never materialized for him. I got too many things up here. That's Kevin Rostenkowski, class of 76, our first Indiana All-Star. That's Kenny Montgomery, our second Indiana All-Star. Sadly, both of these guys have passed away. Kevin passed away in 2017, and Kenny passed away in 2022. Just recently, the student manager on that team passed away too, which is kind of sad, and he was beloved by all the people on that team. I'll read the names of all the people on that team because I think they deserve recognition. They put Perry Meridian on the map. Kevin Benefield, Gary Edwards, Joe Kerrigan, Kenny Montgomery, Mark Flum, Keith Clark, Jeff Covert, Steve Wilsey, and Greg Perdue. I forgot Rostenkowski, and he was one of the main ones there. Kevin Rostenkowski. So, as I said, they really helped to put Perry Meridian on the map. Overshadowed that same year was the girls' basketball team. Okay. They also won their sectional, and excuse me, my allergies are acting up. They won their sectional and also won the regional. Got to the semi-state where they got beat the first game. Okay. You know, as I said, back then girls' sports were just getting started, and so therefore they didn't get a lot of recognition. Okay. But over the years, of course, things changed. Okay. 1977, 1978, we had our first individual state champion, Tom Gould in the rings. And then we also had our first state team championship, girls gymnastics. And the coach of that team is sitting right there. Connie, stand up. Connie was the coach of that team. Some of the names she gave me were Christy Gritton, Kelly Enright, Trila Jensen, Kelly Timmons, Heather Brockwell, Katrina Fair, and Sherry Reitmeyer. Okay. You cannot talk about the school year 1977-78 without talking about the blizzard. Okay. Perry Meridian was closed for 5 days. I want to share a little personal story that's the best decision I think I made during my teaching career. I was sponsoring intramural basketball back then, and the blizzard started hitting on a Tuesday night, January 24th. And I had scheduled intramural basketball, but right before school was out, I decided maybe I better cancel it. And I'm sure glad I didn't, or I might have been stuck in that gym with 200 guys for 3 or 4 days. That might have been ugly, okay? So, I'm glad that I canceled it. 1979, 1980 was a very good year for us athletically with the girls' team, basketball teams. The girls' basketball team won the first county for Perry Meridian in 1980, and they followed up by winning it again in 1981. The coach was Roz Murphy. 1981, we had an undefeated regular season. High hopes for the tournament. Of course, what happens if you get your hopes too high? Thud, we got beat the first game of the sectional. So it was quite deflating. Although the team we lost to was Indianapolis, Washington, and Cheryl Cook, who was a great basketball player then. And as a lot of you in here know, 1981, though, was magical for Southport because they won the girls' state championship. So it ended up being a good year for them. Two of the outstanding players on that team were Mary Beth Sheath and Denise Gritton. Mary Beth became an Indiana All-Star. She went to Notre Dame where she earned athletic and academic honors. And Denise went to Central Michigan before transferring to IUPUI to finish her degree. Denise is well known because here locally, because she was a longtime teacher and head girls basketball coach at Southport, and currently she's over at Southport Middle School, and she's an assistant coach for the Perry Meridian girls. One other thing before we get to those pictures. 1981-82, busing started. We did have some problems. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. However, I think the problems were due to a few people from both races. Over time, things got better. I'll share you another Tom Keating story. In the fall of 1985, I guess, we elected a black homecoming king and a white homecoming queen. Tom Keating came down to Perry Meridian and wrote a story about how far this school had progressed from 4 years ago. Because we were in the news, we were on Channel 13, but I found that gratifying because so often the media will magnify the negative, and the fact that they came down and did a positive story on what had happened, I think was great on his part in the Indianapolis Star. One of the things that started during that time period was Bradford Woods, sometimes called the Challenge Education Program. Okay? This groups of students, parents, administrators, community adults went down to Bradford Woods for 3 or 4 days and engaged in kind of team building, human relation building activities. And I know a lot of people who said that was a really great experience. And so I think that helped too. 1983-84, a very good year for us athletically. 1983, the football team went 9-1. Back then, the playoffs worked this way. There were clusters, okay? And so whoever won the cluster got into the playoff. Well, I don't remember all the teams in our cluster, but the 2 teams we tied with were Lawrence North and Warren Central. Well, if there was a tie in the cluster, they had what was called a cluster buster. Okay? I'm not making this up. Okay? This is even stranger. The teams got together one field. Each team got the ball at the 10-yard line, and so they got a chance to score. Okay? If they scored a field goal, then the other team got a chance at the ball and to try to make a field goal too. If they scored a touchdown, though, it was over. Neither team scores, they just keep going back and forth. Well, it was a rainy night, and on the very first play for Perry Meridian, we got the ball first, quarterback hands off, and the running back fumbles it. And Lawrence North recovers it. They immediately kick a field goal and win the game, or 3-0. Here's all these fans that have gone there hoping to see some competition. They saw 2 plays, okay? A fumble. Well, if they stayed around, then Lawrence North played Warren Central. Warren Central won that cluster. Okay? Also that same year, our boys basketball team got to the semi-state. The coach was Bob Hines. I failed to mention the coach on the football team, Steve Perica. There weren't really any stars on that team in terms of Indiana All-Stars, but 3 of the outstanding players, or a couple of them, were Steve Cox was on that team. Tom Heitler was on that team. Steve ended up playing college basketball at Wabash. But even though there probably wasn't a real superstar, it was a really good team effort. Our boys or girls on the baseball team, okay, they got to the final game of the state tournament. I've always felt bad for them, and actually for all the baseball teams, because the baseball tournament is held after school is out. So we didn't get to have any spirit activities or pep sessions or anything for those guys. That's true though for everybody. I mean, it wasn't just Perry Meridian that didn't get to have it. I mean, all the teams that participated, didn't get to have it. Also that same year, our brain game won the Channel 13 brain game competition for the 3rd year in a row. When you win it 3 years in a row, you get to keep the trophy. And this was a reception held down in Mayor Hudnut's office for a few of the team members. The guy on the far left is David Stone. I'll be talking about him in a little bit. And the guy on the far right is Randy Head. And I'll be talking some more about him in a little bit too. We also won the brain game in 1991, 1992, and 1993. Though that's a picture from the 1993 squad. The coaches varied over the years. The 1986-17 coaches were Joanne Brown and Dave Moulton, and sadly both of them have passed away. The 1991, 92, 93 team, different coaches, Pat Theobald, Betty Redmond, who's in this picture, Rick Swingle, who's in this picture, and Pat Theobald. So there were various coaches that coached that team. I'll jump ahead to 1996, 1997. A great year athletically. Our girls basketball team was terrific. Okay. I missed out. The girls track team, 88, sorry. They won the state championship that year. Marty Reese was the coach. Okay. Sadly, Marty's passed away. The outstanding performer would be Holly Heisch. Okay. And she had a great career at Indiana State in track. Here we go. 1996-97. Sometimes called the Katie Douglas team. They had an outstanding regular season. They were undefeated. They, I think, were ranked #1 in the state for most of the year. And I think they got up to as high as #1 in the country by USA Today. They were good. In the tournament, they got to the final game of the semi-state where they were defeated by Martinsville. Another interesting thing, though, that was the last year of single-class basketball. But Martinsville was a very good team. It wasn't any disgrace losing to them. They were the defending state champions. Okay? Katie was the outstanding player. She went to Purdue, okay, where she earned all Big Ten honors, all academic honors. Okay? She played for a national championship team in 1999, played on a runner-up team in 2001. Okay. After college, she entered the WNBA. She played for several teams, but finished her career here in Indiana, playing for the Fever, and excuse me, when they won the championship in 2012. 1999, we had a 25th anniversary of Perry Meridian High School. Two significant things. One, we had a concert where past students who had been in musicals were invited back, and they got to sing the songs they sung in the musical, along with current students. I think one of the great things I heard from that, Ann Sanders, who was a teacher at the time, told me, she said, you know, some of those current kids couldn't believe how much talent those older people still had. Okay, so that was kind of neat to hear. A second part of that was there was a banquet and dance downtown to celebrate it. So the four people in the picture, okay, left to right, that's Don Robb. Okay. He was our musical director, 1981, 1982. The next person is Mike Slack. Mike was never actually a director, but he assisted Ann Sanders in all the productions she did. Ann Sanders is the third person. She was the musical director in 1980, and then she left Perry for 2 years, came back, and then she was a musical director from 1983 to 2008. And the guy on the right, Guy Rumsey, who a lot of you know from Southport today. So that was really neat to see all those people up on the stage singing together. 1998, 99 also saw the start of the robotics program. That's really become popular. There's more to robotics than putting the robot together and driving it. I mean, there's all other kinds of things that you have to do. It's very popular. They've won a lot of competitions. They've traveled all over the country. Lisa, stand up. Come on. Lisa graduated from Perry Meridian in 1978. Lisa Ward, now Lisa Ward Fultz. She was around to help start the robotics program. And I'm glad she attended tonight. She and her husband were key contributors for years. Her husband, he's still doing, right, you said? He's still contributing it. And so that's just great. Okay? It's very popular, and I sure hope they can continue to have a good future. At the same time, we also went through renovations. Okay? Perry Meridian needed some new infrastructure. We got walls, hooray. Okay? We got internet, we've got email finally. We were the last school in Perry Township to get email. Okay? We got a desktop phone for all the teachers. Instead of having to make a mad rush to the front office or the lounge and use the phone. So there were a lot of things that were added that made Perry Meridian, a lot better. 2002-03, Perry Meridian once again had a really good girls basketball team. They went to the final game of the semi-state where they were defeated by Kokomo. The outstanding player for that team was Laura Gaber. And Laura played ball at the University of Evansville. The coach was Mike Armstrong, who was also the coach of the 1996-97 team. Next picture, the football field. What's the things happened between then? 2000s brought a lot of technological change to Perry Meridian. I don't want to, specify which ones, but there were a lot of changes that came to Perry Meridian. 2013, we started what was called, 2010, we started what was called Rock for the Earth. Okay? The Environmental Club sponsors it. Student music groups come together for performance in the evening, and there's paid admission to it, and all the proceeds go to beautification projects on the south side. And one of the recent ones the sponsor told me was they contributed money to help beautify the gardens over at Garfield Park. So it's nice to see Perry Meridian give back like that. 2014, the Mr. Falcon program was started. That's become very popular. I don't know as much about the things after 2010 because I'm not there, but it's for senior boys, and they compete against each other in talent, interviewing questions, how do they contribute to the school. Girls coach them. And the night of the get-together, they all go on stage and do some kind of a choral singing number together. That might be interesting to watch, but a football player up there doing some of those things. But anyway, they all come together, and then the audience plus there's judges that vote on who is Mr. Falcon for that school year. And the guys that win it, they love to win that. I don't know if it's quite the same thing as being the homecoming king or the prom king, but it's right up there for them, from what I hear from people. 2020, okay. COVID. I may have got pictures out of order from Joe here. No, that's okay. Maybe I didn't get it to Joe, my fault. COVID hit, and so just like the rest of the nation, Perry Meridian pretty much shut down. there were no athletic events. All the instruction was done online for the rest of the school year. They did want to have a graduation, so they had a graduation in the parking lot. And they rigged up a stage, and they spread out all the graduates. They started at about 9 o'clock in the morning, went to about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So there were never like more than one person on the stage at a time. And then they had a senior lane of cars that they would go down, and people would honk and hoot and everything as they got their diploma. Now, if that wasn't hard enough, what happens at about 2 or 3 o'clock? A rainstorm hits, okay? And so there was a mad scramble to get people inside and all the diplomas inside before they got wet. And so, as if they had enough to contend with. 2021, students come back from COVID, mask restrictions, athletic events are restricted. They only go to school every other day. They could only sit every other row in the cafeteria. So that went on for that whole school year. The other big thing that happened that year was that Perry Meridian graduation was moved to Southport. Probably the most frequent question I get on my Facebook page around graduation: why did they move it to Southport? Two things happened. All right. One, they renovated the gym. And when they did it, they had to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which wasn't in effect when Perry Meridian was built. So the seats had to be wider, the aisles had to be wider, the space between the rows had to be wider. So when they did all that, it took away about 25% of the seating for the gym. At the same time, the size of the senior classes had gotten a lot bigger. And so there was no way they could continue to try to have it at the gym. So they decided to move it to Southport. And I have to give those people credit that work on it. They start working on that gym at 6 o'clock in the morning on the Saturday. And they hope to have it done by 8 o'clock so that people can come in for graduation. They can't get in earlier than that because Southport has their graduation the night before. And so they have to wait till all their decorations get torn down before Perry can get in there to start theirs. Now, Steve, if you want a picture of Southport Gym decorated in blue, I'll try to get that for you, okay? Okay. 21, 22. That was a really nice year for PMHS Pry, okay? That year, both Denise Gritton and Katie Douglas were inducted into the Hall of Fame on the same night. I was maybe never so PMHS proud as that night to see two people from Perry get inducted. I'll tell you a little humorous story from me. Now, if you know Katie Douglas, she's about 6'1". Okay? Well, that night she had on high heels, and I mean high heels. And then she had her hair stacked on her head. I stood next to her and I felt like a midget, okay? And I'm about 5'9", 5'10". But later I didn't feel so bad because then I was with Denise and she's only about like this. So I guess it evened out for me, but it was a great night. I'm so happy that I got to be there for a part of it. 23, 24. At the beginning of the year, Mike Tomey organized a reunion of the first Perry Meridian football team. And it was held there at the Perry Meridian Stadium, which we got in 2017. That's let me see. Yeah, there was a picture of it. That is something I didn't think would happen. I just didn't think we would ever see it. So when it happened, it really took me a while to get used to having it. One of the things that I wanted to dispel is a myth that was going around the township that they spent a bunch of extra tax dollars to build that. That's not true. There was a lot of leftover bond money from previous school bond, and so they used that money, private donation. Ray Skillman bought the field, like he did for half the south side, I think, but he paid for the field to be installed. So If there was very little tax money involved in building that stadium. Well, and back to Mike. He organized a reunion, and most of that first team showed up. It was really moving to see them there at that game. And to see Phil Strader, who a lot of you know, rode on in a cart out to the middle of the field for the coin toss. He's on a walker, but he wanted to be there. And so to see him be a part of that was pretty neat. Sadly, some guys from that first team passed away, including the head coach, Kelly Clore, who passed away in 1999. Kevin Rostenkowski was on that team. Dan Everman was on that team. Dave Feeney was on that team, and Dave Tile. And so, it was sad that they weren't able to be there. They had a very moving, kind of like a memorial time for those guys. I've got a binder back there and some pictures of that opening night. Okay. Also, this past school year, we had our first mother-daughter homecoming queen combination. The woman on the left, that's Melinda Larmore Richardson. She graduated in 1998. The girl on the right's her daughter, Lucy Richardson, who just graduated this year. So that's kind of neat that we have a mother-daughter combination. There's the graduation. Yeah, that's what looked like out in the parking lot there, while it was still sunny. I wanted to take time to recognize some outstanding graduates, and this is subjective on my part. I would say that our most prestigious graduate is Clay Robbins. Clay was in our first graduating class, and he's the president of Lilly Endowment. Lilly Endowment, as most of you know, does a lot of community philanthropy work. Clay would be much better known if they didn't have a policy of their executives involved in philanthropy keeping a low profile. Clay told me that they want to do community philanthropy, but they don't want the individuals to be involved in taking credit for it. So if that wasn't the case, I think a lot more people would know about Clay. Probably our most well-known graduate, though, is Katie. This was a picture from back in her Indiana Fever days toward the end of it. If you're a race fan, you might like this one. This is Tom Gray on the left. Tom graduated in 1998. He was a chief race engineer for Jeff Gordon. And then when Gordon retired, he became the chief race engineer for Chase Elliott. And he sent me some swag, including this picture of him with Jeff Gordon. Randy Head. Randy graduated in 1997. He was a candidate for Attorney General, but lost at the convention. About 6 weeks ago, he was a presiding officer for the Republican Party State Convention. And then a couple weeks after that, he became the chairman for the Indiana State Republican Party. He was on that 86-87 brain game team that I showed you. Mike New, class of 1989. Mike was an outstanding football player. He played at Ball State, quarterback. He played in the old USFL for a while. He was an assistant coach in the NFL for a while, and now he's the head basketball coach or head football coach at Ball State. Caleb Wiles, class of 2003. He's nationally known magician. He goes all over the country. I think he's even gone internationally to put on magic shows. He's written books. He was even on the Penn and Teller show a few years ago. He didn't fool him. But he does a lot of philanthropy work too. He will do magic shows for community groups to raise money. Todd Anthony, class of 1982. Todd made a fortune in filters, all kinds of filters. One of the projects he's taken on, though, besides that, is he bought the old Mills House in Greenwood. It's the Frank Lloyd Wright inspired house off of Fry Road. And now it's called the Harry Cooler Conference Center. It's beautiful. He got it restored to what it would have looked like in the mid-50s when the family lived there. They use it now for corporate events. Class reunions, a lot of classes are starting to have their class reunions there. If you get the chance to go through that, do it. It's like stepping back into the 1950s. So I hope you get the chance to go through that. Don Wettrick, class of 1991. Don is well known for his work in what's called innovative education. He works with young people to develop business ideas. And then the state helps him because what they do is he works with a lot of high school kids. If they come up with an invention, a product, he tries to mentor them and then get funding for them so they'll stay in Indiana. You know, build a factory or a small shop or something. So he does a lot of work for that. Robert Jackson, class of 1989. Robert is nationally known as a motivation speaker. He's written a lot of books. His specialty is working with young males. Okay? He's been a keynote speaker for many events. I've heard him speak, and he's pretty dynamic. Robert sent me this picture. He's living large. That's Jeannie Buss, who owns Los Angeles Lakers. Okay? So, David Stone, he was also in that 86-87 picture of the brain gain team. Dave might be the smartest student I ever had. Yeah. Of course, that might not have taken much, but anyway, I'd say he's probably the smartest one I ever had. He is currently a professor at the Naval War College. Yeah. His specialty is Russian history and Russian military history. He's written several books on those topics that have won awards. He developed 2 video courses for the Great Books Project. One of them was on Russian military in World War II and modern warfare. That's John Smith and some other guy that wandered in off the street. John Smith graduated in 1980. He and his wife built the Mars Hill Community Center. We went to the opening night for it. The Mars Hill Community Center is a beacon for people in that area if they want to do arts and crafts, mentoring, tutoring. I admire him because that's a tough neighborhood to build something in. But he took it on, you know, he wanted to do it. John was a candidate for mayor in 2013 as an independent, and right now he is the current Republican candidate for the U.S. Congress from the 7th District, which is, a lot of it includes Perry Township. And he'll be running against Andre Carson in November. Kelly Bixler, class of 1977. Okay. You might recognize the name Bixler. Her family helped build Southern Plaza. And Kelly has her own animation, claymation studio in Hollywood. Okay. And here is Kelly getting one of many Emmys she's won for her work. Okay. I saved one of my favorite ones for last. Rob Goff, 2001. Rob's story is really interesting. He went to Ball State. He had to withdraw after his first year because of cancer. But he recovered enough to be able to go back and finish his degree. After graduation, he's become quite the entrepreneur. Started a tech company, EMCK, sold it, made a lot of money. Started a recycling company, sold it, made a lot of money. Started a CBD oil business. He tells me he thinks it's the largest privately held CBD oil business in the world. He had a clothing company and sold it. I think that's in the picture there. Yeah, that's the name of the company. And here's my favorite one. And being a baseball guy, I had to include this. He started getting into collectibles, especially sports memorabilia. He bought a 1952 Mickey Mantle baseball card for $5.9 million. He sold it not too long ago for $13 million. Incredible. I can't fathom that. And finally, he told me, well, Mr. Brown, I'm also investing in movies now, and I've actually acted in a few of them. So he's quite the entrepreneur. But I was still trying to process $13 million for a Mickey Mantle baseball card. So I did catch him saying that, though. People will ask me, what are some of the biggest changes you saw at Perry Meridian? I'd say the demographics are right up there. The student body population changed a lot, which presented both opportunities and challenges. Technology, that was a big change. When I started, it was print, 16 millimeter film projectors, film strips, maybe some cassettes. Now they've all got Chromebooks. They've got internet access. They've got media production. I mean, you name it now, they've got it. And just like with adults, opportunities and challenges. They got to keep them off the porn sites, got to keep them off the betting sites during the football season. So there's challenges that go with that too. Curriculum, when I first started, there was ES for enriched studies, regular, and then remedial. Those are long gone. Okay? The IDEA Gift and Talent Program, come and went. Now there's advanced placement. There's dual credit. Okay? There's early college. Okay? There's all kinds of things now that didn't exist back then. I'd say those were probably the biggest three that I saw happen in my lifetime, or during the time that I was at Perry. If you want to contact me, here's some information for me. I'll leave it up there after it's over with. I've also got some memorabilia items there on the back table. I encourage you to go back and look at those. I couldn't bring everything, but I brought a lot. You're always welcome to call me if you want to look at the Perry Meridian rooms. I'll be glad to show them to you if we would work something out. I thank Dave Ladd. He takes care of the Southport rooms, and we've worked together on a lot of things. So, the school's a rivalry, but Dave and I work together when it comes to memorabilia because we both love history. This is a video my son-in-law made that some of you may have made it or seen it already. I'm doing this supplemental recording to add some things that I forgot to mention in the original presentation, and also to correct a couple of things that I said. My script pages got out of order during my presentation, so that caused me to make some mistakes, and I want to correct them now. The 1986-87 school year was a good one, both academically and athletically. I already mentioned that we won the brain game for the third year in a row that school year. We also won 7 sectionals that year. That might be a normal year for Center Grove or Carmel, but for Perry Meridian, that's a great year. Our football team got to the semi-state round of the playoffs. That's the farthest a Perry Meridian team has ever gotten in the tournament. We lost to Carmel in the semi-state. Steve Perica was the coach. The 2023-4 school year saw weapons detectors installed at the entrances to Perry Meridian. There are pictures of those in the video that is a part of this presentation. They were also installed at Southport High School. Kenny Montgomery was a member of the 1976 basketball team. He was an 1977 Indiana All-Star. I failed to mention that his son Austin was also an Indiana All-Star in 2003. Our first tennis team went 10-4. I think that's amazing for 2 reasons. 1, we did not have any seniors, and 2, we had to play all the matches away since the tennis courts weren't done. Dave Schaefer was the coach. In the video, I mentioned the first name of our first gymnastics coach, but not her last name. The coach was Connie Beck Walters. I mentioned that our first school state championship was in 1978. It was in gymnastics, but I failed to mention that we won again in 1979, 1980, and 1982. And Connie was the coach for all those years. I need to correct something that I said in the presentation about Paul Montgomery. Paul Montgomery was a member of the class of 1977, not the class of 1975. I also need to correct something I said about the 1996-97 girls basketball team. They lost in the final game of the semi-state to Martinsville. I said Martinsville was the defending state champion. It was Center Grove who was the defending state champion. We defeated them in the afternoon game of the semi-state, but then lost to Martinsville that evening. Martinsville would win the 1996-97 state championship. I should have included the name Jeff Daniel in the names of outstanding players for our 1983-84 semi-state boys basketball team. Jeff played college basketball at Virginia. The auxiliary gym was ready for the 1984-85 school year. This really helped our teams in our phys ed classes. Now there was an additional gym for phys ed classes and for basketball practices. Some freshman games were held in the gym. It really helped me with intramural basketball. There was now another gym for scheduling games. The early college program started during the 2016-17 school year. The program allows students to earn college credits prior to graduation. They can earn a 1-year degree or a 2-year associate's degree, and it's coordinated through Vincennes University. The 24-5 school year saw 2 more sports added, girls wrestling and boys volleyball. The IGSA has sanctioned those sports. PMS already has teams in those sports, but they were classified as club sports. 9/11 shook Perry Meridian just like it shook the whole country. Perry Meridian participated in a memorial event at the football stadium, and all the schools in Perry Township joined in the event and provided different levels of participation. At the end of that same school year, 2001-2002, the Industrial Arts Department at both schools were eliminated. All the equipment and the programs were moved to C9. The rooms became classrooms, study halls, or used for robotics. The teachers were assigned teaching areas in their minor if they had one. If they had no minors, they were given a year to get a license for another teaching area. They were kept on staff as full-time building substitutes and paid their contract salary. Some did that while others decided to retire if they were eligible, while others went into private business. The 2002 tornado ripped through Perry Township, but PMHS was spared.
My memory from that was trying to keep a class full of seniors under control until around 3:45 when they were finally allowed to leave the building. We had an undefeated football team at that time. We were scheduled to play Franklin Central that night. They were also undefeated. Lots of people were looking forward to that matchup, but the game got canceled, and it was not made up. The team finished with an undefeated regular season at 7-0. Unfortunately, they lost the first game of the sectional to Northwest, thus ending a good season. Craig Potter was the coach for that team. That football team was and is the only regular season undefeated varsity team in school history. During that same year, our boys basketball team won their third sectional in 5 years. They won the sectional in 1999, 2001, and 2003. Mark Barnheiser was the coach for all those teams. They lost in the first game of the regional all 3 years. Justin Petty, Austin Montgomery, Brandon Ray were a few of the outstanding players during that time. Sadly, there have been 4 teachers who passed away during the school year while they were teaching at Perry Meridian. Jack Morgan passed away during fall break 1978. Jack Morgan taught business and was part of the original PMHS staff. Jack was the head football coach at Southport during the 50s. Jan Bordeo passed away during the summer of 1994. Jan was part of the original staff. Jan taught health and phys ed. She was the volleyball coach for about 20 years. Dave Thornton passed away in May 2014. He taught math and was an assistant coach for football, track, and wrestling. Dave Moulton passed away over spring break in 2016. Dave started teaching at Perry Meridian in 1974. Dave taught social studies. He was also the speech team coach from 1991 until he died. I think that 25 years as a head coach or sponsor has to be a record for Perry Meridian High School. I want to mention some team members that I did not mention when I was recognizing their team accomplishment. The 1975-76 girls team had as a starting 5 Tara Leslie, Connie Legible, Christy Ernst, Lisa Courtney, and Kim Epler. The 1980-81 girls basketball team included Lisa Cox, Lori Courtney, Denise Gritton, Karen Nitch, Rita Maxwell, Tony Muse, Mary Beth Sheath, Lori Solomon, Karen Fair, Carla Hall, Susie Hinkle, and Cindy Ellis. The 1996-97 girls team included Amanda Bice, Lindsay Poe, Andrea Nordholt, Katie Douglas, Erin Covert, Natalie Sponsel, Latasha Austin, Holly Turk, Kyla Quinn, Alyssa Nordholt, and Charlotte Ridley. The 2002-03 girls team included Lori Gabrick, Katie Ferguson, Kelsey Gerganis, Christina Cunningham, Tanisha Durison, Jamie Whitman, Heather Burleson, Brittany Moore, Deanna Flum, Melinda Hawthorne, Samantha Saba, Sarah Bowes, and Brittany Moore.